I'm joined by representatives of the Milwaukee County District Attorney's Office, the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office, and the Wauwatosa Police Department. As you know, after 11 o'clock this morning, the Milwaukee Police Department was dispatched to a call at 9000 West Wisconsin Avenue for a subject wanted for a warrant for felon in possession of a firearm. The dispatched information to the officers indicated that the subject was armed. Police responded to the scene and made their way to the location where this subject was. They encountered him in the neonatology unit, the step-up unit where the neonatal babies are recovering, and found an individual holding an infant and engaged him in discussion, advising him of his warrant status and that he would have to accompany the police. The subject, a 22-year-old with an extensive criminal history, initially was compliant with the police, put the infant down, and began to leave the scene with them. It was at that point that he started to struggle with police and fled. During the struggle, the initial struggle outside the unit, officers saw that he had a semi-automatic pistol. He escaped their grasp, and they continued to chase him through the ward and into a hallway. This was a hallway in which there were no other citizens, which was flanked on two sides by windows and at both ends by blank walls. While in that hallway, the subject turned on the officers with a .40 caliber Glock semi-automatic pistol in his hand. One officer fired twice, striking the subject in the arm, causing him to drop the pistol. The subject continued to flee, whereupon a struggle continued to ensue on the ground. That struggle probably lasted several moments and covered probably 60 to 90 feet through an enclosed area all the way out past another front desk before handcuffs were successfully put on him. It's our understanding that individual is being operated under for the non-life-threatening wound to his arm. We don't know what else his status will be. That'll ultimately be up to the hospital to determine. The officer is 27 years old, has a total of 9 years experience, 6 on the street. As is our usual policy, he's going to be on administrative leave as the investigation continues. Well, the Milwaukee Police Department will lead the investigation due to its size and experience. The District Attorney's Office will be part of this investigation and assigned to it. Members of the Sheriff's Department will be part of this investigation and assigned to the investigation, and members of the Wauwatosa Police Department will also be assigned to the investigatory team. As of now, that's the extent of my knowledge about this incident.
Chief, for clarification, was this man, as far as this call being served, was this call for officers a call to serve this man with a warrant, or was this a call for a man with a gun? Well,
it came across a female called the Milwaukee Police Department and said this subject was in the ward, had a warrant on him, and usually carried a gun. That's what was conveyed to the officers. This wasn't a situation where somebody in the 3rd District decided to go serve a warrant today, or the warrant unit decided to go find somebody in a hospital. This is a dispatch call in which the indication was we had an armed subject in the neonatology unit. Obviously, this is concerning. The only reason the officers would have to encounter him to find out if he was armed is the fact that he had a warrant on him. We just can't go into a neonatology unit and say, anybody here have a gun? We have to have a lawful reason to encounter them. The lawful reason was that he was wanted for a warrant. It was from that encounter that the struggle occurred, and ultimately the weapon was exposed.
Chief Flynn, do you have reason to believe he was there to injure the baby?
We have no way to know that. We don't know why the call came to us. We don't know for sure who called us at this time. We don't know the motivation for the call. So we really don't know all of that. Certainly, again, preliminary information was there was no visual reason for the officers to think he was behaving threateningly with the child. He was holding the child. But again, they didn't know if he was armed or not at that point. All they did know is that he had a warrant for his arrest. The reason they knew it is because our technology in the computers allows us to print out pictures of suspects. They had printed out his photograph, so they knew for whom they were looking.
How many officers were dispatched, Chief, to the scene?
There were 2 officers at the scene. Other officers were sent as backup, but 2 officers were at the location at the time of the incident.
Do you think that was enough?
Well, you know, they were who we had, and they were there. And as I say, there was no way to predict that they would end up in a struggle with this individual.
Did
the suspect ever fire his weapon?
Chief, that you were coming? Did you notify Wauwatosa PD that you were coming to execute this warrant?
Well, we're still looking into that. We recognize the following. The hospital itself is in Wauwatosa. The normal jurisdictional response for a call like this would come from the Sheriff's Department. The address is 9000 West Wisconsin, which is in Milwaukee. What we're trying to ascertain was this, you know, a simple mix-up at dispatch. Did somebody not recognize what this address meant? I don't know. Certainly 3rd District personnel are here constantly. Milwaukee police personnel are here constantly. I think it was simply a situation, but then I'm speculating that this looked like a serious call. They dispatched an available unit.
Would it have made more sense to send in plainclothes folks, somebody who's not going to have the same reaction, watch the guy, get him off the unit? Could you talk about the appropriateness of going in?
I think people who are in hospitals want to know they're safe from armed criminals. And they want to know that the police department will get there as rapidly as possible and try to behave in a responsible manner. Certainly the nature of the encounter was responsible and appeared low-key. They had a conversation with him. They engaged him in conversation. They didn't have their firearms in their hand. They didn't have weapons in their hand. They were engaging in a conversation, and he indicated he would be compliant with them. The struggle was initiated by the subject. The gun was pulled by the subject. It was the subject that decided to bring a loaded a loaded 40 caliber Glock to this scene. That's the pistol most police departments carry. This is a high-powered weapon in a unit where there are small children in the hands of a felon. This is something I think we should respond to as rapidly as we did. Our officers, I believe, certainly our indications so far are, approached him in a responsible manner.
You did that there was a warning ahead of time.
Like that where there might be kids around or children.
Well, what you started with is a conversation, which is what they did. All right, they didn't start with a SWAT response. They started with a conversation. They certainly were not attempting to escalate this circumstance. But in order to have a reason to intervene, his being wanted on a warrant gave them a reason to intervene and ascertain if he was armed.
But I mean, warning to the hospital.
I don't know.
Chief, you knew the guy was a felon in possession of firearms because he had a pending case. You knew the guy had been charged with fleeing in the past. You knew that he had a gun in this location. Did that not raise any red flags that maybe this wasn't, did this woman suggest that he was going to harm someone, or was it just she wanted her boyfriend, you know, picked up by the cops?
Well, you know, we knew what we knew at the time, all right? And we responded to what we were being told. And as I said before, I think the public expects us to respond to circumstance in which there is an element of danger being exposed to innocent third parties. That's a critical part of our job. Now, obviously, we can debrief this 100 ways from Sunday and find out other things somebody could have, should have done with the benefit of hindsight. Right now, at this moment, at this stage of our investigation, new facts may emerge. Perhaps witnesses will tell us things other than we understand. All of the witnesses will be interviewed by representatives of 4 different agencies. The truth will come out. But at this stage of the investigation, it appears that we responded as rapidly as was prudent to a situation which presented a potential threat to the public.
Were you able to identify the person who made the call to the department?
The person did not. I don't have a name for the person, and you know, if I indicate any more than that, I may be wrong. Okay, so we know what was represented to us over the phone.
Did the suspect shoot, or did he just show a weapon?
Showed a weapon, and it was that time he was shot, and the hand that was apparently holding the weapon is what got hit, and the weapon was dropped.
Do you think it's appropriate for you to be investigating yourself?
Was he hit in hand or arm?
I'm sorry? Well, it's arm. It's been represented to be hand, but I'm probably safer saying arm because if we're 2 inches away, I'm wrong.
Sorry, Chief. Is it appropriate, do you think, or we had this conversation on many occasions, did you talk about the appropriateness of MPD investigating MPD? I know there's been a long history of that. There's also been a lot of controversy about it. This would be an example.
You know, no critical incident that's ever involved this police agency was ever investigated by it alone. Now, the fact of the matter is this. Our investigators are the varsity of Wisconsin. There is not a better investigatory agency anywhere in sight. but we also recognize our responsibility to behave in a transparent and open way. This is why the District Attorney's Office participates in every officer-involved shooting investigation. And this is why today, because of where we are, the Sheriff's Office in Wauwatosa will be involved. We're not involved in some secret cabal to hide the truth from the public. The truth will be in the witness statements, none of whom work for us, and they will be open to examination at another time. So the question is, are we going to have a high-quality investigation run by ethical professionals involving outside jurisdictions? And the answer to that is yes.
Can you talk about, you said he had an extensive criminal history, do you know for what?
There are a number of different crimes, some involving firearms. I haven't got his rap sheet in front of me.
Chief, there was some suggestion that there was some radial problems with Open Sky involving your officers and perhaps other jurisdictions. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, you know, it's one of the issues we always attend to. We have a radio technician up there right now testing radio signals. So I don't know the veracity of that issue, but I do know that we're conducting tests ourselves to see if that's a problem.
Here, as in your communications center?
Here is in the hospital, just to see that it works on the 7th floor.
Chief, is there extra security in the neonatal unit usually, do you know?
That I don't know. I don't know. And, you know, as I say, it's the step-up unit was the term of art that was applied to me. These are premature babies that apparently are now healthy enough to be, you know, visited and picked up and so on. And certainly that causes due care.
Do you know the relationship between the baby and the guy?
Same question to you. What do you tell nurses and doctors, people working here, coming to work tomorrow? Should they feel safe?
Well, I'll tell you one thing about the nurses and doctors and the staff at this hospital. There's probably no more calmer, more experienced, or more professional group of people for handling trauma or crisis than the people who work here. And they are nothing if not resilient and able to deal with stress. Now, I spoke to a number of them up there. I didn't ask them any questions. I'm not the investigator. But I wanted to assure them that we had their safety as our primary interest, that there was a real reason for us to be there, you know, to offer our services or anything we could do. But I can tell you right now, when you talk through a bunch of, you know, women and men who have brought blue babies back to life, they're not easily fazed by these kind of circumstances.
The relationship between the baby and the suspect, Chief, can you clarify that?
Yeah, I don't know exactly. It's been represented to me that he may be the father, but I can't verify that in fact is true.
Will there be more security here now going forward?
I think this. I mean, I think they have a good amount of security here now. I mean, you can never have enough security to, you know, prevent some random one-off event like this. But certainly they've got good hospital security. They've got the sheriff's department here looking out for them, and everybody else is just a phone call away.
Clarify the protocol if you have
Thanks.
Clarify the protocol. You might have some folks saying, well, if you thought he was armed, why not wait until he leaves the hospital and he's away from other people?
Well, I mean, the challenge is if we don't know this individual except that he's got a criminal record, and we know he's in a place where there are unarmed, vulnerable people, the challenge for us is to get there in a timely manner and make sure that if he is armed, that he's not armed around all those folks. So, I mean, everything we do is fraught with risk. Everything we do is subject to scrutiny. There's certainly no doubt about that. And I think the challenge for is, you know, all right, do you wait and see? Well, what if he decides not to come out? What if it turns out there's a domestic violence circumstance going on? What if it turns out he doesn't want to let go of the baby? What if? All right? We have these reports. It's our moral obligation to investigate these reports and put ourselves at physical risk to do it. We seem to be forgetting that there were two men wrestling with a guy who had a .40 caliber loaded pistol. All right? They didn't have their guns out when they're wrestling with this man. Now, that's a risk they're assuming on everybody's behalf. Certainly, they did not vote to put themselves in that circumstance. I think we want to remember that as we march forward with our ex post facto judgments. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
And Chief Flynn answering questions about the altercation inside of Children's Hospital today. He did let us know that the call initially came from a woman concerned about a man she knew who she knew to carry a gun. So that is why police came to the scene, and that 22-year-old suspect apparently cooperated initially, but then began to fight, and that's when the scuffle began in an area in a hallway where there were no civilians around.